Hello, welcome to the Tennessee Informer. You know, Memphis is not really known as a bastion of constitutional conservatism, and it has a large Democrat population, a Democrat mayor. There's no shortage of rhinos, and it's considered to be a Democrat stronghold here in Tennessee. Not to mention that it can be a pretty dangerous place if you don't know where you're going. But that doesn't mean that there aren't good people there and that nobody cares about the Constitution or conservative values. Tonight, you're going to meet a man from the Memphis area that has been fighting the good fight for the last 15 years and is involved with two different organizations that push back against the liberal agenda that's trying to dominate the area. Mitchell Morrison is with both Take Back Tennessee and the Campaign for Liberty. Mitchell, thank you for coming on the show. How are you doing tonight?
Doing great. Thanks for the opportunity, Dave.
Well, how did you get into politics initially? Or not really politics, but I guess you could call it being active and pushing it back against the machine. It's probably a little more accurate description.
Activist, absolutely. Well, I paid a little attention in Sunday school, but really just wanted to go out and play. And I paid a little attention in school, but really just wanted to go out and play. But one of the things that I did focus on, pay attention to, was history. And I had a few good history teachers. And I'm not good at reciting battles and dates and that sort of thing, but I did pick up through it all that there seemed to be a repetition in the people versus the king, or the people versus whatever government. And later, in later years, that I revisited that, and it helped me a lot to try to absorb what was going on in current times. But I guess I was about 13 years old, and I was really close to my dad's dad, my grandfather, who fought in World War II in the Battle of the Bulge. And he would talk politics quite a bit. And he was always an even-tempered guy, calm, never lost his patience. And one evening, something came on the news that we were watching, and he got really upset. And I asked him what was he watching there, and he said that it was they were going to bring all of Europe into one government and have one currency. And being a sarcastic 13-year-old, I said, so? And he said, well, when they do it over there, they're going to come do it over here. And I said, well, so? And he said, well, you don't want that. You want local government. You want to vote for your representative. You want different currencies to make it more difficult to manipulate the currencies. And so we kind of dropped it and went on about our business. And then when I was about 12 years later, I was getting ready for work at 4 a.m. and had the news on in the background and heard the launch of the European Union. And Dave, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I said, how did this man predict this, 13 years ago before it launched? And so my curiosity was sparked, and I started researching. I had never researched anything, but I became a little detective and went to the library and just tried to get my hands on anything I could to either prove or disprove the things he had said. And it all seemed to fit. And one of the first publications I came across on the newsstand was Foreign Affairs, the quarterly publication of the Council on Foreign Relations. And it was all right there in front of me. They weren't even trying to hide it. You could go pick up, what the insiders, the elitists were doing. So I got that magazine and several others, and I just continued to research. And after a couple of years, I just grew frustrated with having the knowledge and no one not doing anything with it. So I put some of my research stuff together, and I don't know that PowerPoint was available back then, but I learned how to manipulate transparencies. Wow. And I pulled some people together and had meetings, and shared what I knew, and the meeting started to kind of grow. And then other people had other information, and they started to talk to me about the political process and influencing representatives and that sort of thing. And so that's how it all kind of grew. And so if there's anything that I can, help the listeners with tonight is, I am Joe Six-Pack American, if ever there was one. I've worked in the grocery industry for 35 years, and there are many things that just average, ordinary people can do to make a difference and to get us to turn back to the Constitution and put these elites back in their place. And so that's what I'd like to do with the talk this evening. And that's how I came to realize what was going on.
So we're talking more than 15 years ago. We're talking more like 30 years ago. Close to it.
28, yes, sir.
Okay. So after you had this meeting and showed everybody what was going on, where did you guys go from there?
Oh, one of the first things I did was I started something called Expose the UN Day. Expose the UN Day. And so I learned how to build a website, just a little bit to create an advertisement for it. And I had some friends who had more knowledge than me on selling tickets and how to enter tickets and sell tickets off the internet. And found a location and found a speaker who was a professional on it. And we did it 3 years in a row. And Stephen Fincher was the representative at the time. And so every year I had it in October, 3 years in a row with different speakers. And we had food brought in. That was part of the ticket cost. And I had pre-printed postcards explaining just a few bullet points of why the U.S. had no business funding the UN. And so I accumulated them through the 3 meetings and had a significant stack of these postcards. And I got a call one day from a friend of mine that Stephen Fincher was going to be in Fayette County at the Republican meeting. And so I went with my stack of postcards, and I was one of the first people that he called on when question and answer session came. And the room was full. And so I didn't know at the time, but somebody was filming it. And so I stood up and I spoke for about 15 seconds and told him what I wanted to do. And he had one of his secretaries take it from me. And that was that. And about 5 days later, a friend called and said, "Hey, did you see?" I said, "You know what? See what?" And he said, "Stephen Fincher signed on to stop funding the UN." And so that's just an example of, if you just put the time in and you maybe have a few volunteers, the significant things that you can do. So that was one of the first things that I worked on.
Well, unfortunately, he was. I'm glad he signed on to that, but I'm sure you know his overall record as well as I do.
Oh yeah.
He ended up not being what we. So much for what was he? He said he was going to plow Congress. So much for that. But to your point, you brought him information. You did the research. You brought him information. You collected all these signatures and you gave it to him. And hey, politicians, they stand for re-election. They may not stand for anything else, but they stand for re-election. And when he sees a big stack of cards, or if they're getting a lot of calls or a lot of emails about something, they pay attention, especially if it's an election year.
Right. So another thing that I did was try to get involved with the Shelby County Republican politics. And so, like many counties, there are local clubs, and then there's the county party, and then state executive. And so I got involved with one particular club here locally, and I went for several years and volunteered, and it was a good old boy network. They were happy to take my effort and my volunteerism, but then when it came time to vote and rewrite the bylaws and expose them when they were violating the bylaws, they didn't care for it whatsoever. And so, for example, whenever they would raise money for an event or use club money to donate to a politician, they wanted to turn it over at that time. They wanted to turn it over to the county party and kind of fluff themselves up and say, look, we're donating to the county party. But I would stand in objection and say, hey, we did this here locally for the club. Let's use it for the candidates running here in the area, not transfer it to them. And of course, then we would have a vote on it, and the audience would listen and go my way. And then they were just fuming after the meeting. They would accuse me of having a problem with the county party. And they would play games like, you hear the Democrats talking about how Kamala Harris was not chosen by the Democrat voters, how she just was kind of plugged in there.
Right.
And here at this local party that I was a part of, they had legislation one evening they wanted everybody to vote on, saying that if there was ever an emergency, that three elected members could get together and vote on anything, anytime, and allocate money.
Wow.
So, the standards just kind of go with where the power is sometimes. And so I exposed that to the audience and brought that down.
Yeah, there's no reason for a county party to have, there's nothing that's such an emergency that a county party needs to be able to pass out money like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then I ran for the state executive committee, and I'm sure you were involved back then. The state executive committee is one man and one woman per Senate district. And these flyers went out. It says, some people want to take away your right to vote in primaries and give it to elites in Nashville. And you turn it around, and I only had one opponent. And the other constitutionalist only had one opponent. And so I've never tried to take away anybody's right to vote. This is, it's just propaganda. And so you may remember that this came up on the news back in 2014, that it was a PAC, Strong and Free Tennessee.
I remember the name. I remember hearing the name, yeah.
Well, we'll come to find out another person running in another part of the state investigated, and they hadn't filed properly, and they hadn't registered properly, and ultimately they were fined. But Poland.
Okay. You back with us? You froze up there for just a second.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, that's just the sort of thing they'll do to keep the going.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they got all the dirty tricks down pat. They've been at it a long time, the establishment has.
Yes, sir. So from there, I thought maybe there should be another, ongoing organization here locally. And while I work 50 hours a week, that was no excuse for not being able to get anything done at all. So I started a little group, and I called it Take Back Tennessee. And there's a slide, if you guys can get a hold of it. It's the process of Take Back Tennessee. There you go. Thanks. So, Dave, I'm sure you're like me. You speak to individuals and you see people's posts on social media. And so frequently, people have the attitude of things are being done to them. And there's not much they can do about it. Maybe that's legitimate, or maybe they want to be forgiven for not being able to. So a lot of people look at the vote and they think they're done. And so you can see in this picture here, I tried to, open their eyes a little bit with this example. So I tried to show that, maybe it just starts with a vote, but that's just one part of the process. Yep. To vote for the best candidate available, yep. Not to scream with your hair on fire that someone's not perfect. They're never going to be perfect. But to research and find out who's the best. And then after the election, it's not over. From there, you need to read the legislation, yep. Read the bills, and we are so fortunate to have the website we do here in Tennessee for the General Assembly.
It is a good one. It is a good one.
Oh yeah, we can watch videos and look up bills, and it's just fantastic. And these little things are take us a long way to get to where we want to be. We don't have to stop and build these now. It's already done, and that alone is a significant blessing. And then to know the committees and what committee the bills are in, and what representatives are in those committees, and to know the vote schedule. So when a bill comes up that you like or don't like, you can start right there with those committee people. And that's what I've done for about 5 years with Take Back Tennessee, is to follow through the whole process all the way until, a potential governor veto if it gets too far. And then it goes to use the information to give the representatives reasons to support or oppose. So once you acquire that information, you can not only educate the voters, but you can create quick little bullet points and hand them to the representative, because he's going to be receiving pressure from other lobbyists and donors. And so to equip him with the information he needs and the bullet points to fight it or vote for it, is helpful. And of course, it builds the communication that we're supposed to know all of our representatives anyway. And then you can apply pressure and educate the other voters. And then use the representatives' voting history.
Yep.
So I'm sure you're familiar with Tennessee Stands.
Yep, absolutely. They do some good work.
They do some great work, and they've got a voting report card.
Right.
And so, just like the Tennessee General Assembly website, this is another tool in a toolkit for us. This voting report card, to help when we do these things and we're political activists. People come to us whenever it's election time, and they say, "Hey, Dave, hey, Mitchell, what do you think I should do? I don't know this guy, and I don't know that guy," and that's fantastic. And we can always go to these voter guides. The Freedom Index is another one that does the federal and state level. So there's just no excuses, to not know, and to be able to share those with other people so they can make informed decisions. But to know the representative's voting history. So people will get frustrated when they have a loss or two. But that's just part of the system. Those can be used in the future, because there will be another election and you will have an opponent. And then you've just, if you've lost a bill, well, you've just gained information for the next person running against him, to potentially help that person win and put that person out of office. So I'm just an optimist. I don't typically see losses. I just see another tactic for a future battle.
Well, and a good reminder for everybody too, in the Tennessee House, those guys run every 2 years. Now the Senate's every 4 years, and they're staggered. But 2 years is not a long time. And to your point about making contact with them and giving them bullet points, they're on ever how many committees, but that doesn't mean that they know everything about every bill that's coming down the pike. Now, they're going to hear from the lobbyists, whatever lobbyists are pushing it. If the committee chair is pushing it, or other people on the committee, and or the legislator if the legislator who has actually sponsored it is serious about getting it through, they'll probably have talked to him as well. So if you want your side to be heard, you got to take it to them, and otherwise you're not even going to be heard. So like you said, it's a good thing to do some research for them, and just so they know all sides of the issue, because they're definitely going to hear from the other side. It's up to you, each individual, to make sure they hear from them what they're concerned about.
Right. So one of the things I did here recently was, Justin Jones and the Tennessee Three pushing their red flag law and their summer session.
Right.
So one of the things I did there was he put up a bill, and I don't know, but I'm confident by reading the bill that, he just had to put something up there because he put a lot in, when maybe he should have just, put one or two things. And so for 3 straight meetings, I just told my audience, I put his bill up there, and we dissected it into the 3 segments of what he was fighting for. And I just took one of the segments each meeting and gave him reasons of why it was ridiculous. And he really liked to use phrases like "we the people" and "fighting for the people." And so, I just used his own language of how he was taking rights from the people, and kind of go back into history and explain why, we needed guns and the effect that it can have on societies when we don't have the balance of armed citizens and the government, and how bad that is. So, meeting after meeting, we just send him letters, just dissecting. And so to have one, my thinking, and talking to other representatives, they might ignore it. But when I have an audience of people, writing it in their own way, and he gets many letters, that may be a little different. I have friends that are representatives or retired representatives, and they say, hey, no one ever contacts us for anything. So when we get a letter, we pay attention. And when we get 12 letters, it's a disaster. It's all hands on deck. It's all hands on deck. We say, what is this?
Just 12?
Yes.
So now, okay, what did he say about emails or phone calls?
They log them. They log them. That's another thing I do with TBT. If there's a lot of time to fight something, then I'll have the audience do a letter. And if there's a little less time, we'll do a postcard, or maybe a pre-printed postcard. And then if there's not much time at all, then we do emails and phone calls. Right. And we have them fill out those sheets too. And it's best to do all of them. But the thing is, right there in the meeting, I cover the legislation, why it's good or bad, who's putting it up, what could the true reason be, why should we fight it or support it, and then we write the letter. We stop, we write the letter, we write the postcard, and then we go on to the next subject. And then, if the people choose to, whenever the meeting's over, go home and do some homework, do an additional email, additional phone call, well, that's just all the better.
Do you guys ever go up there as a group during session? I know that's kind of hard to do for a lot of people.
All of the people that I'm with here in Tennessee, this is what we can do, because so many people work, and then some people aren't able. But that doesn't mean that we can do nothing. We absolutely can, and we've had some success, and that's great. Yeah. So another thing about Take Back Tennessee is, for people who would be interested in doing something like that in their area, is, it's just so much better to have a like-minded friend, to visit with a like-minded friend, and have a team or build a team. And then in those meetings, people like to disintegrate into debating and just talk. So it's important to do the work in advance and preparation for the meetings, so everyone stays on task and focus, and not turn into a debate, and that it all stays optimistic, because that can ruin the meeting if you go the other way. I tell people they can be negative 29 and a half days a month, but when they come to Take Back Tennessee, they have to be positive. Yeah.
That's your one day of being positive per month. That's right. Not a bad idea. And you're right, you do have to keep control of these, because everybody, and hey, I'm inclined to do it as well, everybody will get on their soapbox, and next thing you know, everybody said a lot, but you really haven't accomplished anything. You haven't narrowed down to the good, the bad, and the ugly of the bill and what you want to do next. Right.
And the audience loves it. That they wish I had them more often. And I don't think they know how much time goes into planning them, put them together, but that's great. So those are some things that I, kind of primarily have done on my own. And then the funnest thing there is group activity. And so I think you put up a slide earlier regarding a group called Campaign for Liberty.
Yes, I think we've got that.
Yeah. So that is a national organization that actually does not know that, we're even doing much here in Memphis, Tennessee. But there's the Facebook. Thank you for putting that up.
Sure, sure.
So, I really recommend please consider going and following the Take Back Tennessee Facebook and the Campaign for Liberty so that you can see the next speakers coming up to speak. And we have done Campaign for Liberty since about 2009. And, just to offer some more inspiration to people who, think they can't do it. What happened was I attended a Tea Party sort of event at a park here on April 15th in about 2009, when a lot of those tax protests were going on around the country. And made some acquaintances who knew some other people, and they were really frustrated and serious whenever they took each other's phone number and they wanted to do something. And so we met, largely strangers, less than 10 people, and we met, and we knew that this Campaign for Liberty was coming together from a politician who was for sound money and the Constitution and the founding principles and these sort of things that we were for. So we just jumped off of that, and we got together, said, okay, here we are, what can we do? And we talked among ourselves, and one person was a good tech person to do audio and visual, and he volunteered, and someone else volunteered to do social media, and someone else volunteered to be the MC of the meetings, and then we found a meeting place, and we just put it together. And through the years, we've had Henry Lamb speak on property rights. You know Henry Lamb, Dave?
I know who he is.
Yeah. He was our very first speaker. I was thrilled to be able to meet him. Charles Heller from Jews for the Preservation of Firearms. Franklin Sanders.
Okay.
On sound money. Sheriff Richard Mack.
Yep.
James Perloff, and just on and on. 15 years of monthly speakers. Wow. And so sometimes we would sit there and we would say, okay, let's try to figure out who can be the next few speakers. And someone would say, oh, well, I know this person, but you'll never get him. And someone bold in the group would say, well, it's free to ask. Pick up the phone, dial, the person answers. Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. I've been wanting to come to Memphis, absolutely. And so it's easy to do, just with a little determination and imagination, you'd be surprised what you can accomplish. And I started by saying, that's the fun. Working with the group, we've never laughed so hard and had so much fun as when we get together to play in the meetings. It's like we've created a whole nother family. And so, all the years we didn't do it, we were definitely missing out. And so, just if you just have that one person in your area, if nothing's going on in your area, you just have that one person that, feels the same way you do. Well, get together, talk it out, and come up with a plan. Get a small meeting in the back of a restaurant and go from there. You may if you don't know anything about PowerPoint or electronics or sound, well, that person may come forward and present themselves.
You pretty much, so you were at the start of the Tea Parties, and I remember when they started. I didn't actually go to the first ones, but actually did start with, my first one was here in Paris that I was involved with. But one of the things that I've noticed over the years that the people that have been involved for this length of time, they've got a pretty good idea about how the Constitution is supposed to work versus what the government's been telling us all these years. And I think that's key because, we can never fix anything if we don't follow the instructions. And if you don't know them, you can't follow them. So that's another plus is learning that and or whatever the different topic is, having different people come in that are experts to talk about different topics. I mean, that's the only way you learn. And so it's good that you guys are doing that. And I'm sure that you can think back to people that, well, we didn't know much when we started, but now we got several people that know about several different things. And so that's always a plus.
Yes, sir. And this is a good time to mention that our next speaker is you. So yeah, that's coming up next Monday, I believe. You want to talk about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead and pull it. Okay, so it's going to be next Monday at 6:30, and it's going to be at Farmington Meadows Homeowners Association, 7940 Farmingdale Road in Germantown, Tennessee. I'm looking forward to it. I appreciate the invite, guys, and I haven't done a lot of these. I mean, I speak, but I haven't made a lot of trips to speak. And I appreciate the invite and looking forward to it.
Well, thank you for your willingness to drive all that way.
Well, I appreciate you being willing to have me. So, I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, I've known you for several years. We have never actually met face to face, but we've had discussions on the phone, social media. Mary Hill, I've talked to her some in the past, and I've known of her for years. Never actually met her. I know a couple other people in that area. I don't know if they'll be there at the meeting or not, but there are some good, solid conservatives in that area, and so I look forward to meeting some more.
Well, great, thank you. Yeah, we're looking forward to it. And your subject is going to be
nullification. We're going to talk about nullification. We're going to talk about the constitutional reasons for it, or rationale for it. We're going to talk about the proposed legislation that it's sponsored by Representative Halsey and Senator Bowling. It's the Restoring State Sovereignty Through Nullification Act. The current bill numbers are House Bill 2795, I believe, and Senate Bill 2775. Those numbers will change in the new General Assembly. But that's basically what I want to talk about is nullification, the constitutional rationale, and talk about the actual legislation that's being proposed so that people understand. And I'm looking forward to, I appreciate you guys the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I actually followed that in my previous Take Back Tennessee meetings. And so, we did our part to inform, and so we're all primed and ready for another effort to educate the representatives. Yeah.
And they need a lot of it. But now, and I will remind everybody that, I know there's a lot of scoffers out there, but in 2021, almost every Republican senator, and in the House, almost everybody in the House on the Republican side supported a resolution in reference to nullification. This had to do with the federal government's overreach during COVID. And they said that they had not only the right, but the responsibility, because of their oath, to push back against federal overreach. And oh, by the way, we're not limited to court action. So that's something that, I agree with 100%. They did the right thing. Now we want them to do a little more. So we'll talk about that next week. And like I say, I do appreciate the opportunity and look forward to it.
Great. Well, another little story that you might appreciate, and other people can mimic, is in 2005, whenever I was before I had started Take Back Tennessee, I communicated with an Arlington, Tennessee alderman about the North American Union.
Ah.
So, going back to the beginning of the program this evening, I talked about the European Union, and there's an Asian Union, there's an African Union, there was a tried North American Union, and of course that's what I attribute these open borders to, that we're experiencing now. It's so interesting. The elites, back whenever George W. was president, the terrorist attacks at 9/11 really slowed down George W. Bush's plans. He was working with the Mexican President Fox to open those borders and add on to the NAFTA. Yep. And if it wasn't for 9/11, we would be a lot closer to having the integration of the Canada, American, Mexican Departments of Energy, Departments of State, and on, security and everything. But whenever that happened, the Americans just stood up and, put on the brakes. And Fox and George W., they had a meeting at their podiums where they were ready to go for it, to score the shot. And the representatives and the senators did their job, and they stood up and they weren't having it. So after 2005, 18 states started putting in legislation to oppose a North American Union. In some states, it went through both branches and governor signed it. In some, it was simply introduced. In others, just the Senate, and others, just the House.
Right.
But 18 states. And Tennessee was one of them.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and I met with some representatives who laughed at me. And then ultimately, when it was time to vote, they voted for the thing. They voted against a resolution opposing a North American Union. And so, you have to have thick skin and you have to be an optimist, to have coffee with a representative and have him laugh at you, make fun of you really. And then, to understand that you're planting seeds. And I'm sure when he had to vote, how many people could there have been who wanted to have coffee with him and talk about that? So, I'm confident that whenever he went to vote, that the things that I said were on their minds. And so that was another nice win. But before that came up, I talked with an alderman, and there was an effort going around to have UN free cities, United Nations free cities, United Nations free zones. And so I got my hands on that document and rewrote it to stop the FTAA, the Free Trade Area of the Americas, which is also the North American Union. And it was the first resolution in Arlington in 2005 that was on their books to be voted on. And so they, almost all of them, 6 aldermen and the mayor, most of them attended a presentation I put on about it, and said that they would definitely, lean towards voting for it, that it was a problem, that they couldn't believe they weren't aware of it, couldn't believe it wasn't on the news, and they were kind of furious about it. So when the election came, 2 aldermen voted for it, and 4 against it, and the mayor against. And so now today, they call the alderman who still lives there, and he's out of office now, but he'll run into them at the grocery store and at the convenience store and bring it up because, now they're furious about, the open borders. And there were even busloads of illegals stopped through there, and the 2 hotels came to stay at the 2 hotels there in Arlington, and it went all over Facebook, and everybody was upset about it. So the gentleman who brought it up back in the day, wanted to remind them of, hey, 10 years ago, we could have announced this. We could have brought attention to this. Even though it's a resolution, to get news and it kind of slap people across the face. What is this? What is this I'm seeing on the news? Arlington did what? And then from there you can answer the questions and lead them along. And like I say, it's all there on the internet. The FTAA website, all this crazy unification and overriding the Constitution, it's all there in their words.
Yep. But a lot of people probably don't understand if they haven't dealt with legislators. Number one, they do way too much legislation every year. And so they can't know everything about what they're voting on. There's no way, because they do too much. At your county level or your city level, I think a lot of those people will believe, well, if what this guy is telling me is true, I would have heard about it somewhere. I would have heard it on the news. I would have, the state would be saying something, my state rep would be doing something, or my state senator, or the governor. That's not the case. Don't assume these guys know, or don't assume they don't know and that they have any intentions of stopping some things. Because we have a lot of people up there that they know what's going on. Some of them don't, but some of them do. And they just go along with it because, hey, the governor wants it, or this group wants it, Chamber of Commerce wants it. There's a lot of people that are not necessarily looking out for our best interest. But you talked about working with coalitions, and so when I'm there next week, of course I'm going to be dual-hatted, Tennessee Informer / Tennessee Citizens for State Sovereignty. So we'll talk about that, and maybe we can, definitely look forward to working together with you on the nullification issue. But there's so many things. There are so many threats out there from the globalist. And the sad thing is, our state, in a lot of ways, they're already supporting this stuff. I mean, if you go look on our state website, you'll see Biden's, climate change plan. You'll see the One Health garbage that they're pushing. That's all part of a UN plan. So, people, you got to wake up. You got to get involved. There's no one person riding in on a white horse to fix all the things that we're faced with. So people have to get involved. If you want a country, and if you want your kids and grandkids to have a decent country, you're going to have to get off your butt and make sure it happens, because it's not going to just take. It's too important to just trust to politicians to do the right thing, or to even know what's going on half the time. There's some politicians up there, and I know you've dealt with enough of them to know that some of those boys ain't too bright.
Oh yeah, they're straight embarrassing folks. But you and I talked earlier today about this presidential campaign and election.
Right.
And this is not how it's supposed to be. A Hail Mary at the last minute on the shoulders of an 80-year-old for us to be able to stick with the Constitution. Our presidents are our congressmen. So the president is just supposed to follow what Congress tells him.
Yep.
and make sure that the laws are being followed. And maybe it's the media, maybe it's the school system. Citizens today, voters today, they're stuck with kind of going back to thinking they have a king.
Yeah, that's the mentality for a lot of them.
Is the king, and the representatives just kind of skate. but all the pressure and all the focus, has got to get back on these representatives, because that I know that's where the power of the purse is.
Yep.
And that sort of thing. But the more we outsource to the president, who we know outsources to the different departments, and then they grow the deep state,
yep,
who ends up overriding our representatives. That's how we've ended up where we are today. So.
And that's funny you should bring that up, because I am going to be doing recording a show for next week, and that's going to be my topic, is this upcoming election, and how it shouldn't be as important as what it is. It's important. It's always been important who you elect for president. Don't get me wrong. It should not be make or break the way it is, and it is because we haven't been following the Constitution. We've been allowing them to make up the rules, and we don't hold them accountable. We let them tell us what the rules are, instead of saying, hey, it's not what the Constitution says, and actually expecting our state to intervene. Unfortunately, our state, like so many others, they're complicit on a lot of things. They're complicit. A lot of it has to do with the money, with being bribed with their own money. So it's if we're going to turn these things around, I mean, we got to get the top cover, got to get Trump in there. But if we waste the 4 years that he's in there, if we get him in there, and we don't do what we need to do to have our state kind of stop just going along to get along with the money, and if they don't start, we got to make them stand up and say, look, you have to stand up you have to push back. And hey, we've got to be more financially secure here. Now, Tennessee overall has a good record for that, but hey, and I know, we get 40% from the federal government. How physically responsible is it to be tethered to the Titanic? Because we know the Titanic's going to hit the iceberg here eventually.
Exactly.
And I would think at least they would want to start doing something about it. Anyway, I don't want to get too far down that road, because that's going to be the show for next week. But we'll probably talk about that a little bit when I'm there next week with your group, because I think that ties in. People need to see things like nullification. They're not just some novel idea. There's something we have to do. if we're going to have a chance to get our country on the right road. And it may be too late, maybe too far down the road. I don't know. But I don't have anywhere else to go. Okay, I'm not independently wealthy. I'm not going to go to some other country. And this is home. I'm staying here. So, got to do something.
Well, you know, we have so many tools in the toolkit. It would be a shame, you know, to just sit and, you know, just entertain ourselves into oblivion, into socialism, into prison. The internet, programs like yours, where you're not dependent on the big boys, you know, to be able to reach the people. Social media, Tennessee Stands, you know, I work 50 hours a week. You know, I can't sit there and research the things he does, but I can certainly donate to him, and I can share his message on my monthly Take Back Tennessee meetings. Tennessee Firearms Association.
Absolutely.
Federation for American Immigration Reform, Gun Owners of America, John Birch Society, Tennessee Eagle Forum, Citizens for Renewing America. I mean, so much of the work has already been done, and you know, it just would be a shame to have all these tools and just, you know, just let the thugs, or as I view them, the slave masters.
Yeah.
I view politics as my fight against slavery. You know, I know the left likes to, you know, represent it as color, and, you know, go back a couple hundred years. But these elites, you know, it's the elites who want to be the slave masters of the people.
Right.
And, you know, you and I know they're trying to limit food, limit cattle grazing.
They want total control. They are the well-heeled scum, is what I call them, and we got no shortage of them, unfortunately.
Yep, and so like I started out in this talk, you know, that this is another replay of history, and here we are again, and this is, you know, kind of, I believe, a fight that you and I were kind of meant for it, and appreciate having an opportunity to take part and, you know, help the next generation and pass on our blessings and our freedoms to keep these slave masters from being able to take it from us.
Absolutely. Well, hey, thanks for fighting the good fight. Thanks for coming on the show, and look forward to actually meeting you next week. I've got some announcements and information about our guest for the show next week and in the following weeks. I want to thank everybody for taking the time to watch our program tonight. Please be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons, as well as the notification bell so you never miss an episode. We appreciate your support. Check out our audio podcast on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and other platforms as well. Sign up for our weekly newsletter at our website, TNinformer.com. Find and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Want to learn more about the true foundations of American Republic? Saturday, October 26th from 1 to 6 p.m. Central with attorney and constitutional expert Jeff Cobble, who wrote the nullification bill, by the way. He will be teaching on that very topic at the Peachtree Learning Center, 100 North Main Street, Sparta, Tennessee. Donations are accepted but not required. Text or call 931-316-6339. The Stewart County GOP will meet this Thursday, 6:30 p.m. at the Stewart County Visitor Center. Also, we will be selling Trump signs on Saturday, October 26th at the Stewart County Fair at the ball field on Highway 79. Join us next week, where the topic will be the 2024 presidential elections. And we'll talk about why they're so important and what we need to do. This goes back to the discussion that we were having a few minutes ago. 2 weeks from tonight, on November 4th, the night before the election, our guest will be Jessica Vaughn, Director of Policy Studies at the Center for Immigration Studies, for a timely discussion on the details about what's at stake in this election concerning our borders, our sovereignty, and immigration, really the future of our country. That's it for now, and good night from Paris, Tennessee, that is.